And welcome to 2.4 Chemical Reactions. Again, we are in Chapter 2 dealing with matter and change. We've talked about various properties of matter. We've talked about various changes that matter can undergo. And now we're dealing with chemical changes, one of my favorite things to do in chemistry. So first of all, let's give a definition in terms of a chemical property. A chemical property, let me get my pen here. Get our blue color that we're using in this chapter. A chemical property is simply the ability of a substance to undergo change, or to undergo a specific chemical change. We'll get into various chemical properties as we go throughout the course. I could give you a bunch of different chemical properties, but since we don't know what those reactions are at this point, it'd be going in one ear and out the other. But here's the deal. During a chemical change, the composition of the matter always changes. Always. If it doesn't change, it's just a physical change. But during a chemical change, the composition of matter must change. This is also called a chemical reaction. And let's write out reaction. I usually don't write out reaction this way. I prefer to write out reaction RXN. It's just an abbreviation that I picked up along the way, and so you'll be seeing that throughout this course a lot. Okay. So that's what a chemical reaction is. So let's talk about some clues that a chemical reaction might be in fact happening. Well, the first clue a chemical reaction is happening, or a chemical change is happening, is a transfer of energy. Well, what does a transfer of energy look like? Well, you could have some light emitted, and it could be a flame. You could have sound being produced. You could have heat being released. The thing gets really hot. Or the other way, it could be absorbing heat and feel cold. All of those would be considered transfers of energy. You could have a change in color. That often accompanies a chemical change. The production of a gas. What does the production of a gas look like? Well, oftentimes you can see the smoke or the vapor coming out. Or, so we'll just go ahead. We got C. I'll put smoke in quotations marks, because it's really not smoke, but the first time people see the vapors coming out, they say, well, they see smoke. It's white smoke, or whatever it is. So you can either see smoke, or in case of a liquid, you got some bubbling. And finally, you also have the formation of a precipitate. Now, all a precipitate is the solid coming out of solution. And you'll see what a precipitate is if you're not quite sure what we mean here. Basically, here, let me quick draw a picture. If you have a solution, we'll talk more about what solutions are, but it's a liquid with something dissolved in it, and then you take another, oops, apparently it's a broken beaker, but here's another solution, and I pour this into there. There's a chemical reaction that can take place, and a solid will form and sink to the bottom. And so it's going to look something like that. That's all precipitate is. You're going to see a lot of them. In fact, you're going to do a reaction in which you produce 96 of them very, very quickly. All right, so those are some possible clues to chemical changes happening. Just because a color is changing doesn't mean you have a chemical reaction. Not necessarily. You always have to think critically about what you're looking at, but these are some good guidelines. And in the next podcast, we're going to talk about the law of conservation of mass.